Okay, so maybe let's start with the contribution and how it's structured. So what you see here is like these different folders, and these are like some kind of example setups for different usage scenarios. So you have the standard one, the texture control, and the image-based lighting and texture control. These are the three main ones. And yeah, first I will go through these three usage scenarios and explain them. After this, I will like patch another example how to set up a scene, and we also will have some theory, and then we have a bit of hands-on where you can just ask questions and try to do maybe a little scene of your own and light a model or something, and yeah, or we can do things on request. So this is like the standard setup, and we can have a quick look inside of here. So this is the main module. Usually at this point you don't have to look into this. You can just treat it as a black box. And there's a lot of sends and receives going on, and I will in the next version also streamline this, but it doesn't really concern you now if you use it. So this is the main shader, and then I got a module where we set up the lights. And this looks like that. And yeah, what I will do in the next version, maybe if it interests someone, I will concentrate all these buffers into one buffer, which is much better. But for now, you don't have to look inside here, it just should work. Okay. So, and then we have these two other subpatches, and these subpatches are also right inside this module. And we have one that concerns the material of the object, and one that concerns the lighting. And yeah, so as you see now, we already have two objects here. It's a grid and a sphere in this scene. And like with the usual V4 spreading, yeah, they just exist here. And what's maybe interesting for the super physical, all the lighting is not spreaded with the objects. So there's just one lighting scene, like there are some lights and maybe a global color, and every object will receive this light. And the material side is completely spreadable. So if you have three objects and three materials, they will be spreaded like it's usual in V4. And the idea behind this is also a little bit, this contribution used to be called Superphong because it was all based on the Phong lighting model. And now it's called physical because it's now a fully physical-based rendering setup. And what this means, this is a really common workflow nowadays. It's used also in, I guess, most of the game engines, Unity of course, and Unreal Engine. And the idea behind the physical-based rendering is that you define everything like in the material, and then no matter what your scene looks like, your lighting, the material always looks correct. Like if you have some kind of stone, it will look like stone. It will be kind of, for example, have roughness because the light will be dispersed by the fine little details in it. And this is independent of the lighting. If it's dark or bright, this will just work. So you can just define your object, how it looks, and then do the lighting. So now this is the most basic kind of material setup, which it's really easy. You just have a color of the material, which is also called in this physical-based pipeline sometimes albedo. And you have these two main parameters, which is the roughness of the material. If you increase this, you see the reflections, they will get rougher and rougher until it's like kind of smooth. And you also have the metallic. So as I told you, you can like spread this here because it's the material. So the second value goes to the second object. And for the metallic or metalness, this is usually just 1 or 0. That's just how this workflow is defined. So in reality, most things don't behave like metal, and metal has some really special properties, and everything in between is just doesn't really exist. So if you put something in between, this is like to simulate like some dirty metal or something like that, or some coating on it. We will see this also later. And what the metalness does, it kind of has no diffuse reflections. So if you have like a plate of metal, and you kind of only see the reflections more or less. And also if the material has a color, you see now the reflections are colored. And that's actually a physical effect, like a real-time, real-life physical effect, which is simulated here. Okay, so yes, please.
Actually, it's a reflection of one object with the rock. It reflects the floor.
No, there's no. Okay, the only type of reflection we will see later is some image-based reflection, which is some kind of fake reflection. We will get into this. And there's no screen space reflections or something like this there yet. I might try to implement this. Yeah. But maybe let's go into these more advanced topics later. But yeah. So no, there's no. So the sphere won't reflect in the floor now. Okay, so that's just concerning the material. And then now we have the light set up here. And this consists of the 3 types of light that are possible at the moment, and also some global settings. And these are actually kind of fake. They are not really included. They're not really part of the physical-based rendering pipeline, but I just included them to have a bit more freedom. Like for example, if you look at the scene here, it looks quite unrealistic because the bottom of the sphere here is pitch black. And usually if you had like global illumination, the light would bounce off this bottom plane and bounce back to the bottom of the sphere, and it would look brighter. So I got this global reflection color, which you can increase a little bit, like this. And this is, of course, totally fake and depends on your scene, but it already looks a lot, more realistic, or not so much computer graphics. A little bit better, I guess. So that's what that is for. And what I also like to do sometimes is if you set the background color, or maybe just do it. I'm already sending the global reflection color, so I will just do a receive color and select the global reflection color and put this into the background of the renderer. So now if I put some color here, this is always, I think, a really nice effect because it looks like there's a colored world around this and everything receives a little bit of this color. Could also be gray, of course, but yeah, it's not a black void, everything. Yes?
They change the metalness of the wall to 1,
Mm-hmm.
and then change the global reflection color from completely dark to a value of 0.1, then it jumps to...
Yes, you mean this? Yeah, that's what I told you before. This is not really part of the global reflection thing, so yes, this is one kind of bug. I have this on my list. It doesn't really play well with the metalness somehow. But also it's kind of correct, because what I said before, usually you just have 1 or 0 metalness, and things that are fully metal will fully reflect. So it's kind of correct, but the jumping is of course not so nice to design with it. So yeah, okay, yeah, good point. Okay, and in the standard material I also, of course, can add a texture.
It's kind of white pixels you have now at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, that's just anti-aliasing actually. So the reflection increases with the angle, and it's actually kind of correct. On the edges it will be like 100% reflective. That's something that actually happens in the real world. Like more or less everything is like 100% reflective if you look at it at a very, very steep angle. But in this case you really see this, of course. Yeah. So you just use some anti-aliasing or something to get rid of this, or just try not to have these really big contrasts. So if I do it like this, it already looks a bit more nice, I guess. And I just used here the file texture 2D. So we can just choose some texture. So that there's also an assets folder, which is actually quite huge for contribution, but I think it's nice to just try out different things. Okay. Then also we have here little additional shader, which is called tone mapping. And that's because in this other shader all the light calculations are done in a linear way. But that's not really correct if you think about how light behaves and how the camera sees it and your eye sees it. So there's kind of some curves to it. You would also do like in film editing. And this is just one nice curve that will do the lighting balance a little nicer.
I have a question about that. Now,
Yes.
so if I set the gamma to 2.2, which is what every monitor is pretty much calibrated to, it looks way wrong.
Yeah.
So I
That's
don't know if that value is just some magic number you come up with, or is it?
yeah. So that actually might not be correct in that sense. I can show you which method I implemented here. So usually it should be set to 1, and maybe I should not name this gamma because it's just like a factor.
It's like a
So it's
scaling.
yeah. So it was just to still be able to adjust this curve a little bit. So yeah. But as you can see, if I turn it off, the white's already getting way too bright and it all burns out. And so this looks already a bit more balanced. Yeah. You can also try to find another tone mapping shader here and plug it in. I just pulled it out of this shader because I like to have the background also gammaed in the same way, or yeah, tone mapped in the same way. So if you don't do this, if you do it before everything else in the scene, the colors will look totally different and the brightness will be different. So that's why this is an extra module. Okay, so yeah, let's go into the lights. So we have different kind of lights. We have the directional light, the spotlight, and the point light. And first the directional light. I will turn the other lights off for a moment. So go just in here and disable them. And also now disable the reflection color and everything, so we just see the one directional light. Yeah, and the directional light just has no fall off. It will just light your scene. It's usually like, you usually like use this for the sunlight, because it all has like parallel light rays, and also the shadow is parallel, and in reality you usually only have this with the sun. So this is what it's mostly used for, I guess. But it can also be used for if you want to give some global color feeling to your whole scene a little bit. Yeah, it's also a bit like a global light, I would say. So for every light there are these helpers. Yeah, so as you can see here, you have a light range, and this also affects the shadow, as you can see. You have the distance from this point here. So this directional light is looking at 0, 0, 0, and with a distance of, let's say, 5, it has a range of 6. That's a bit short, so maybe like 8 maybe, and you can just rotate it with these sliders. That's a kind of a scale, and this is only important for the shadow. So only inside of this box there will be shadows of this light. And as you can already see here, this also affects the resolution of the shadow. So if I have a really big box, now the shadow is getting more and more blurry. And if it's smaller, it will get more sharp. That's because for the shadow, like exactly this part of the scene will be rendered again with this resolution here. And of course, if you see more of the scene, you have less pixels for your shadow map. So the scale here is only important for the shadow. Yes?
Is it possible that you have a specular point with the directional light?
Yeah, I just included this because maybe that's not a correct implementation, but I think it's nice to have a specular also for this light because you also have a reflection of the sun, for example. Yeah. So I thought this is useful. And then we have some kind of light intensity and also the light color, of course. And
Sorry, can you just elaborate a little bit on the light intensity and the light color? Are they interacting with each other inside the shader?
yeah, so the intensity is more or less just a multiplication. That's basically it. And the color maybe you use from the standard shaders of before. You have usually like a specular color, ambient color, and diffuse color. And here the light just has one color because that's a bit closer model to reality. Of course, in reality, a green light has also a green reflection, not a blue one. So you have maybe a little bit less freedom artistically there, but this whole thing is based on the concept that it's kind of physically correct. Or, yeah, it's not physically correct, but it's physically based. That's why it's also called physically based rendering, because all the algorithms are trying to simulate how light behaves. Okay, so let's maybe get into the shadow mapping a little bit. So here you of course have the resolution, which can actually be quite low if you blur it. If I put the blur to almost 0, yeah, we got a little artifact here if you put it to 0 also. Yeah, but as soon as you blur it a little bit, you can actually go really low with the shadow resolution. And these lights are also completely spreadable, as you would expect it. So let's, for example, take the jaw or yaw and put a linear spread in here. Yeah. So we got several directional lights now. And it's already getting a bit too bright in the scene because they all add up. So I will just decrease the intensity a bit. And also the shadow is automatically spreaded with this. Yeah, so the spreading should just work as you would expect it. So now if I want to have one shadow that is a really high resolution, I also have to use spreads. So let's just do it like this. So I put in 5 values for the 5 shadows, and one is a higher resolution. Oops. Yeah. Now this one shadow has a higher resolution. Yeah. Please try out the spreading. This hasn't been tested too much. So if you encounter any bugs, just tell me, I will fix it as soon as I can. Okay. Yeah, and you also can enable and disable the shadows here, and you should also really make use of the spreading here, because usually you don't want to have too many shadows in your scene, of course, because it will get really expensive at some point. This shadow mapping technique is quite cheap, so as you can see, you can like easily have like 20 shadows or something, especially if they have the really low resolution. This still works. Yeah, but usually you don't want to have every light to have a shadow. Oh, sorry. Okay, there's also this setting here that's called light bleeding limit. We will maybe see this later a bit. This shadowing technique is kind of cheap because it's only an approximation and uses some kind of tricks, I would say. But these tricks also produce error at some point. If you have things that are really close to the camera and things that are really far away, and the shadows overlap on the ground, you will kind of see. You will see some artifacts. Maybe I can show it. So I will do another sphere. Yeah, I will maybe just spread this here and put it between here. So you actually don't have to patch along here. Just play around. Okay, so second sphere. And I will increase the distance a bit of these lights and the range also. And put the sphere even higher and maybe a bit closer here. Oops. Okay, now you see it here. It's kind of weak, but you see this kind of line here. So the shadow maps kind of bleed into each other. And you can reduce this with this setting here. So it will also look a little bit less nice, not so smooth anymore, but this is the setting where you kind of can reduce these errors. Yeah, but usually I just don't really care about them, especially if you have moving lights, and so you don't really see this. Okay, so that's the standard setup, I would say. I will close this now. And go to the next one. Okay, so this next one is called texture control, and everything is basically the same, especially the light setup is exactly the same subpatch, but in the material here we have some more stuff. Okay, I will just make some space here. Okay, one thing I forgot before. So there's something Okay, I will just disconnect these textures here for a second. Okay, now it looks like the scene before, basically. Oops. Okay, I forgot these two things, the SSS and SSS fall-off. This is subsurface scattering, and this is actually not correct at all. This is just a fake thing, but still it gives you some nice effects. And what this is actually doing inside of the shader is just adding some light dependent on the distance of the light to the object, which is completely fake and not really subsurface scattering. But if I increase this a bit, I will also just activate one light now so you can see it better. I will just keep one point light and move it a little bit down. So if I increase this, you can see now also the parts of the object receive light that are in the shadow. So as if the light was moving through the object, kind of. And if I increase this fall off here, you can, especially with like simple objects like the sphere, get some nice effects. So it looks a little bit like it's, yeah, glowing from inside, or it's, yeah, you want to use this for materials that are a bit like marble or something, where the light travels inside of the object. Yeah. Okay, so that's these two settings here. Okay, now the idea of the texture control is that all the properties of the material are defined by textures, not by just values. Like you don't set the roughness here manually, but it's all controlled by textures. And this is also more or less a standard. So if you know maybe Substance Designer, so this is a tool to create, yeah, materials for 3D rendering. And I will quickly show you. They have also some kind of material library here. Yeah, okay. So what I'm using in my shader is the workflow, which is called metallic workflow, because we have this metalness property. And this is the same algorithm, more or less, that the Unreal Engine is using. So if you have any texture packs or something like that, sometimes they are called for Unreal Engine. These will work with this superphysical shader. So, and for example, here for the Substance Designer, where you can download these materials, just to show you. Yeah. So they provide you with these kind of textures also. So you usually have a base color, which is also called albedo, then the normal, the roughness, then the metallic, and the height map. And yeah, that's why it's called the metalness workflow. There's also a specular workflow, because you have this metallic texture, and this tells you how much, yeah, metalness an object has, in which part. And as I told you before, usually it's just 0 or 1, but in this material it's kind of dirty, so that's why there is a grayscale parts of this. Yeah, there's also a really nice website which is called freephysicalbasedrendering.com. And they have these really nice free materials. And yeah, they are all free. You just download them, it's really nice. And they also have most of the time, yeah, the Unity and the Unreal Engine versions, and you would want to use the Unreal Engine versions. I'm not really sure, maybe the Unity is also fine. So, okay. No thanks. Okay, so now we have these exact textures that we've seen before. So in the assets I put some folders, and these are all the different types. So this one is just that's just the color. Then we have the normal map, and this is used for bump mapping. So let me just increase the brightness here a bit of this scene. Yeah, and if you increase the bumpiness, yeah, you will get some bump mapping, which is already a little too strong. Oh yeah, what I forgot. So as I told you before, you have these two manual settings here, and if you're using textures, you should set these to 1. So everything inside is multiplied by 1. So put the roughness here 1, metalness. Okay, it looks strange now because I didn't connect the metalness texture yet. So let's do this. Okay, it's just actually a black texture. So yeah, a bit useless in this case. Okay, I will also connect the roughness and the height map and the ambient occlusion. So yeah, ambient occlusion is just some information where in your material there are dark areas. You can also compute the ambient occlusion in real time, but usually it's nice to have it baked already in the textures. So if you have maybe some floorboards and in the cracks of that there will be no light usually, so that's the information that's in the ambient occlusion map. The height map here can be used for another nice feature, which is called parallax occlusion mapping. And if I activate this is like some more advanced, yeah, let's just call it way of bump mapping. It's not correct, but as you see before, the bump map reflects the light kind of correct. So if I move my light here, like all the dark and bright areas change according to this bump map. But if you look like from an angle, you see, okay, this is still a flat grid, doesn't have any depth. But if I activate this, now there's some kind of fake parallax, so it gets a lot more depth. That's of course also just an approximation, kind of fake, so it will also break down at some angle, and it doesn't really work for every object. So this doesn't really look correct on the sphere here, but it looks really nice. So I think you can kind of hack this a little bit and get some really weird effects. So yeah, and here you can actually see the steps of this algorithm, which are not enough now because I have a really extreme height map scale. You can also increase the numbers of samples here. But this is getting really expensive at one point. So yeah, just be careful and not to crash your graphics card. Okay, and this is also like receiving the shadow pretty much correctly, as you can see here. There are no shadows in this height field, but it will receive the shadow map. Okay. Then there's one button here that is called Node Tile, and this will get important if you like increase the scale of a texture. Now you see it repeating over and over again, and if you do the Node Tile, it will kind of spread this out randomly and blend it, so you don't have this repeating. But it's also kind of expensive. So in order to do this, the texture has to be sampled like I think 8 times or so. So just keep this in mind. If you have especially large textures, all the textures in the example folder are actually quite large. I think they are 2048 by 2048 or something, which is already kind of big. And yeah, this will not work with the parallax occlusion mapping. Or will it? Maybe it does. No, I think it's not correct. It doesn't work. Let's say it doesn't work. If you feel it works well enough, then you can just use it. Okay. So this was the texture part, I think. Let me just think for a moment. Yes. Okay, yeah, let's continue. So the third setup is called texture control and IBL, which is called image-based lighting. So this is another thing, which means that you use some images basically to light your scene, obviously. And you usually have like a cube map of a surrounding like this. And yeah, now the object will behave as if it's lighted from this cube map. So now the material part stays more or less the same as before, and now for the first time we have a different light setup, and we have these files here which are new. And these are concerning the cube map. So you have 3 things. One is the BRDF lookup table. That doesn't really concern you. You always have to use this and provide this. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we just have a look at the preview. Okay. So this is actually just some baked information. Like the algorithm in the shader has to calculate how the light bounces off objects on a certain angle, and also concerning the roughness of the object. And this is just some information that's already been calculated. It's like a lookup table. I think from left to right is the roughness, and then you have the intensity of the reflection. So doesn't really concern you, but you always have to provide it to the shader if you use the image-based lighting. Okay, then we have the cube map reflection and the cube map irradiance. And we have here a 2D vector which can trigger these two. As you see now here, nothing happens if I use this, because that's the diffuse light. And as I told you before, this is now a metal object. It doesn't really receive any diffuse light. It reflects everything it receives. So if I just reduce the metalness here, now it looks a bit more like plastic or something. And now this also has an effect. So maybe I'll put it to 0. This light you see here now are these other lights. I will turn them off now because it might be confusing. Okay, so now it doesn't receive any light. If I increase this here, this is just the diffuse light of the scene. And now you see these dark areas. It's because it's reflecting a black environment. If I increase this here, now we get these reflections also. So that's the 2 values. Usually you already have this baked in here. So when you create these textures, you already set the brightness, but you still can like multiply it here. And these 2 textures have been created with a tool. So I don't have a way to do this in V4. I think MicroD might have some modules, I think, where you can do it in V4. But this will not work really in real time, so you can also use other tools. I will just quickly show you. Yeah, it's open source tool. I will just open this for a second. Yeah, just quickly show you. I won't explain this tool, but with that you can generate the two textures you need. And what we need for the reflection is this, this radiance or reflection texture. And this has baked in different levels of blurriness. And this is how you can do actually like blurry reflections. And this tool will like really smartly take a panorama or a cubemap and create this for you. And then it will, and also it bakes the irradiance, which is yeah, the light that is reflected here. Now you see this logo is bright, so you have a little bright spot here. Okay, just leave it at that. Yes. If you have questions or are more interested in this, we can go through it also, maybe later. Just take one panorama and do the process to bring it into V4. Maybe we can do this later. Okay, and then you just use here the reflection and irradiance. Maybe I choose the two files. So we have this image-based lighting folder, and then there's also a studio version, which I just did in Cinema 4D, just some random boxes. You could also patch your environment in V4 if it's static, and then export the cube map, create the two maps, and import it again. You can also, maybe I can also show this later, just do some fake things, maybe just render a cube map, blur it a little bit, and stuff it in here. It will not be correct, but sometimes this is just good enough. I will show you later. So, okay, I'm going to change these textures. So the reflection color gets this one, and the irradiance that one. Oops, yeah, and now here the background didn't change because it's outside here in this cube map. I also take the stereo skybox. Okay. And this is what I was talking of before. Now we didn't change the material, the setting changed, and the object just behaves like it should. So you don't, yeah.
What's the first one there, the first page?
This here?
Yeah.
That's this lookup table. Yeah. It also here in the folder under image-based lighting, and you also just have to provide it here. Okay. So in this example setup, I added one more thing compared to the last one. Oh, two things actually. Hang on, just let me. There's also an option for refraction instead of reflection. So if I activate this, it will look like glass. But yeah, this refraction only works with the cube map, of course, so it's also image-based. There will be no refractions if there's another teapot behind it or so, in this case. Yeah, with the refractions goes these refraction indices, which are just the different amount of refraction for red, blue, green, as you can see here. So you can simulate a bit of light dispersion. And there's also another thing called iridescence. If we activate this, you will see now the reflections look kind of colorful on the edges. And you also have to provide here this texture, which is just looks like a rainbow, I guess. Yeah, I'm also changing it now, which doesn't really make sense. So this is like what you know sometimes of like oil or some type of beetles have this. If you look at it at an angle, the reflections will have a different color. So, and this also works, of course, in combination with the refraction. Maybe if you want to do some soap bubbles, this will be the way to go. And so this also works with all the other textures, like the roughness and the bump mapping. This material now has no bump, so.
What do you have to switch off to make it glassy?
You have to switch on the refraction.
What is this?
Yeah, that's I only put this in the example image-based lighting and texture control because the refraction only works with is only image-based. So yeah.
Maybe by turn on refraction,
Yes. The metalness has to be 0. Yeah. I wasn't really sure how to handle this, but if you say this is a metal object, it's kind of might make sense. If you have a material, maybe it's half glass, half metal for some reason, then this might make sense to also have some metalness. If you have a metal control texture, you maybe the handle of the teapot is made of metal and the rest is made of glass, then it could become useful. Okay. Are there any other questions up to this point now? Okay.
Sorry, where do I set the textures for the image-based lighting?
Which texture?
And the three textures. Okay.
Yeah. 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 So what Sibyl just said, all these patches are just the example setup, with a lot of sends and receives, which is also kind of messy. Of course, you can just go in here. Yeah, all these resensitives. Just use the shade. You can also just use the shader if you like. But as you can see here, there's this really stupid model with a lot of cables. In the next release, this will be just one cable. I didn't have the time to do it for this workshop. But yeah, for now it's more convenient just to copy-paste the folder for your usage scenario, yes.
So I experimented with this last night. I made a big scene with like 60 objects, let's say.
Yeah.
And it got really confusing because you're using, you have to use spreads to like make the different materials and make the different lights and all this stuff. And you kind of have to remember, okay, which object index is that, and like, it'd be nice if there was a way to like directly tie material to an object, like in a central place, like an entity component system kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that way you don't have to like sort of carry around this like lookup table of indices of what IDs all your objects are when you're trying to assign different materials and stuff.
Yeah,
PBR, like textures, there's just a ton of textures.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is not a game engine yet, so.
Use the message.
Yeah. Sorry?
That message plugin, what's the good use with that?
Sure. I think MicroD I haven't checked out his newest thing, had an approach to have a central like editor to assign materials to objects. That's what you would like to do if you would have a real game engine like thing. So for now this is mostly useful if you have like small things, like I usually use it with like 2 or 3 objects to do a little scene or so. Otherwise, you will just get these usual V4 problems of just handling huge things. Yeah, totally. And this is totally in development still, so this will be improved. And yeah, it's a good point. So yeah, I will patch a scene in a minute, and you will see it works quite well for a couple of things. But if you want to really handle large scenes, yeah.
I think it's okay until it's dynamic. Like if you want to add or remove objects with associated materials, then you have to invent something to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just have like an amount of objects and an amount of materials, you can simply spread it. So this is okay.
Yeah.
Sharing micro:d patch is the same. If it's dynamics, you have the same power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
There's no solution.
Maybe message is a good approach for this. I think there you can pack resources like textures and I think even geometries in English versions, and then select and split step at some point.
yeah, and also like these modules here are they're quite okay to work in, but I'm also thinking of using the editing framework here to just make this more intuitive, and so that you can edit things in the scene. That would be nicer to just move around lights, and not just do it with IO boxes. Yeah, but that's the future.
VR, the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I will, if there are no questions, I will patch one more example. Okay, let's close this. And as I told you, now in these folders, everything is like twice. Every folder has these shaders. And this is just for now for convenience. So you can just say, okay, I want to do this kind of scene. I need image-based lighting and I need the texture control and everything. I just copy-paste the folder. So that's, I think, the most easy way, especially for beginners. Now you can change everything in here and you don't have to worry about anything.
So just going back quickly, the 3 different types, is that the shader actually different, those 3? Or is it just
No.
controlling things that are
It's actually completely the same shader. I just activated and deactivated pins and inputs, so you don't have to do it all. I also will do in the next version or so a better way of deactivating parts of the shader you don't need. So now things you don't use aren't actually not computed in the shader, but I think there are even better ways of doing this. But yeah, actually this workshop is not supposed to be about this, but more about using it. And even if I implement these improvements, the usage will not really be much different, I hope. So that's the goal, kind of. So yeah, as the user, you shouldn't be concerned. So you just copy paste this folder. And now I would like to, what I would like to patch is an object which has different materials at the same time, kind of. Das wäre cool, ja. Müsste mir noch den USB-Stick noch mal bringen. Okay. So let me just make a little space here.
documentation of all these things?
No.
What refraction means, what
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
I mean, is that just common 3D rendering?
Yeah. There's no documentation done by me, but for example, there's this really nice article here, which is called Physically Based Rendering, and you can too. And this is a really nice roundup of all how physically based rendering works. Yeah, just from a theoretical. It's not bound to any engine or anything. So it just explains the concept. Yeah. Like for example here what I told you before, that most materials are kind of in this spectrum here of reflectivity, like even like wet mud or so is kind of reflective, but this area here is only populated by kind of metals in reality, so that's why you usually just use 0 and 1, for example. Okay, hang on. Sorry. Okay. Now, I want to do a kind of custom material, I would say. So I will have a renderer here. And connect to preview. And I'm just using a quad here. And connecting a transform to the quad. So I will just have 3 materials in one material. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, doesn't matter. So, okay, I will do just a spread of 3 and scale this. Oops. Like that. And I will have a spread of colors so we can see the different quads. Yes? Okay, sorry. Yes. Oops. So I will just divide the spread count here by the width. Sorry, I will just make a little bit more space so you can see it better. Okay. So we have the 3 colors now. I will just change the scene a little bit, because I don't want the teapot right now. I want to have 2 objects. So I will do a cons geometry, and I want to use a sphere, a little bit high resolution. And I also want to use another asset here, which is called Studio, and that's just some kind of backdrop.
Does this influence the rendering, or when you put them into cons? Is the left one rendered first?
Yes, that's, yeah, exactly. So this is influences the spreading. So, or, yeah. This, yeah, it is influenced by the spreading. So the first object now is this custom object, and the second one is the sphere. So if I spread any of these inputs here, now the first one is also the background. And I will just turn off some of these lights, so it's all a bit much. I turn off the directional and turn off the point light, and we just keep the one spotlight and the image-based lighting. And yeah, so if you have 2 objects, you can also spread these here. So I just want to put the sphere a little bit higher. That's about it. Sorry, I have to rearrange the windows a bit. Yeah, you don't have to do this now, I'm just setting up the lighting a bit differently. Okay, maybe I just wait 1 more minute until everyone maybe catches up. If there are any questions, just ask. So what we did now is just create a custom texture by using just a quad and a linear spread with 3 colors. And what I want to do now, I will deactivate this helper here. I want this background to keep this look, this texture, and I want to have a different material for the sphere. So I also add a cons here for texture. Cons texture 2D. Wie bitte? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I will do this and then I'll wait a bit. So we have 2 objects now and we want 2 materials, so we also have to give it for the spreading 2 set of textures. So I have to do a bit of patching here. Just connect. Oops. Some cons everywhere. So just a quick recap. We have two objects, so it's two geometries and also two transforms. That's why we can move them individually. I also spread like the metalness here because for this background I just wanted to be not metallic, and this is the thing for this sphere. As you can see also I set here the roughness 2.5 because I feel in the texture the roughness is a bit too much. So you still can play around with these manual settings also.
Das 4 von der Auflösung. Also
Yeah,
mine is quite.
I usually use something like 64 or so for the sphere. Depends. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, if you use a low resolution of the sphere, not only will it look blocky, but also the light calculation will get less correct. Because some things are calculated per vertex. That's just detail, but yeah. Of course it looks better with a higher resolution. But yeah. Okay, so maybe I continue. So now we created this nice rainbow texture, and I will just connect it here to the cons. So now you can see the second object got the second custom texture. And now since there's nothing connected to the second pin here, actually that's how the cons works, or like spreading works in general, it'll still take the first input here. Like the cons doesn't generate an empty thing. If nothing's connected, you still only have the one texture. Okay, I'll make a little more space even. And maybe instead of just having different colors, I want to use actually different materials. So I will do a file texture. And yeah, maybe let's do it like this. And then I will go to the assets, materials, albedo, and just take all three of the materials. So now I have three textures here, and I connect it here. And now I have already three materials. You don't see it really well now because the object is still completely metallic. I will turn this off here to 0. Okay, now we see it a little bit better. And I will also disconnect the color now again and reset this pin. So we have the original color of the textures again. I disconnected this here. You can also leave it if you like. And yeah, as you can see, it's already repeating. That's because here the standard setting I had in here was 5 for the scale of the textures. And I will just set this back to 1. Like this. Or maybe 2. And yeah, what's also really nice is that you can like manipulate the texture coordinates here. So maybe I will just change. Right. Don't look. Change the roll a little bit. So maybe I do it like this until it kind of lines up again. yeah, you will get some of these errors here. That's just because it's really like kind of hackish way to change the texture space now. Did everyone get up to this point, or other questions? So I just used 3 textures for 3 materials instead of the color, and changed here the texture coordinates. Actually, it's a bit strange that you have to connect the scale Z for the texture. You just need this for the parallax occlusion mapping. If you activate this, you also have to scale this. It doesn't really do anything. In this case, you can only use a uniform scale or whatever. Okay, so now the material has different colors, but still all the other properties are the same. So that's what we want to change also. And also this looks a bit stretched here, like this texture. So I will oh no, that's wrong, sorry. I don't want to change it here because this here is the global scale of this texture here, which is applied to the object. But inside here, these are kind of stretched. So what I want to do is change it here at the quad. The quad also has a input of texture transform here, and I can change the individual textures in here. So I put maybe 3 here. This looks kind of correct. I guess you could also calculate the correct scale, of course. And I will also increase the texture size here a bit, and also make it a quadratic texture. Come on. So I'll make it just 512 by 512. Sorry, it's not really a lot of space in the screen. Maybe it's a bit messy. So that's the texture transform. I will delete the color now. This was only for showing you. Yeah, maybe like that.
Can you change the texture between wrapping and mirroring?
Yes. That's
Then you get rid of this actually.
yeah. Well, if you go,
I have to go into everything.
yeah, I think I do. Because inside of here, in this really massive patch, there's a sampler, and there's just this one connected now. But I can also, yeah, maybe put this outside, and then have the usual sampler nodes. And maybe put this to mirror or linear mirror. Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense now, but that's the place where you can change the sampler.
What is the other one doing? The one you had to connect it inside?
I had connected the anisotropic sampler, which is just a simple one. If you have the sampler advanced, it has all the settings, so you can also use the anisotropic here, but that's just a simpler version only for the anisotropic. It's the same as if I would set it here to anisotropic and yeah, set the limit here. So for the ones who are interested, these sampling things are actually controlling how the texture is sampled inside of the shader, and this will affect the quality of the texture. So Maybe you have a close look here now. Yeah. Now it's all pixelated and blocky. That's because the sampler here is saying to point. I think if you don't connect it, it will be just the linear wrap for default. And yeah, like this anisotropic, it's more expensive, but looks quite a bit better. If I set the maximum to like 16, yeah. You see, especially in these areas here, where you have a strong angle, you will get like more details. In this kind of scene, it doesn't really matter a lot, but yeah.
You have to increase the texture size, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I will not go into this now, but yeah. We can if someone's interested later. I will delete this again. Okay, back to our sphere. So now I want to do it also with the other properties. So I will just stupidly now copy paste some things. I will copy paste the renderer and the quad. Sorry. I don't know if everyone knows this. If you just copy and then Control-Shift-V, you still keep these connections that are upstream. That's kind of handy sometimes, because I still want for this the same transforms of the quad. I still want these 3 panels, so I can just use the same transforms and everything. The only thing I want to change here is the texture here. So I disconnect this and copy paste. Yeah. So the shortcut is Control Shift V for just Control C as usual for copying. Maybe it's a nice trick to show. So if I have Control Shift what? D. For duplicating. Yeah, right. So I just Control copy and Control Shift V here, like this. It still keeps this connection. And now what's also nice, I moved this node here, and if I do it again, it will keep this transform. It's also nice. Does it also work with D? No. Oh, maybe? No.
It's nice steps.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry for the messiness. I did a second renderer now because now I want to have also the correct textures for the normal map. So I go to the materials and to normal and just open all of these. Here you see them, and connect this to the normal map like that. And now we also got the right things for the bump mapping. I will put the roughness now back to 1. So we have the correct values here. And yeah, the roughness is actually not connected yet, sorry. Like the roughness texture is not here yet. So this looks like really, really glossy, wet stone. Because it's 100% glossy or bumpy. And so I will do this one more time, copy paste this. And I'm always keeping here the transform of the quad and the transform of the texture. Okay, sorry, I will just restructure this a little bit so we have a little bit more space. This here. Don't need this now. Okay, maybe that's a bit more clear now. The texture size is always the same also. Okay, maybe that's a bit more clear now. So, and the third ones I want to take is the roughness. So I go to materials and roughness, and just open these and put them in the roughness. Now, and this now looks a bit more like it should. The stone is just very, very rough, of course, because it has also really small details. And these floorboards here are quite shiny. So I will add another light so we see it a bit better. Sorry. I will enable the point light, and I will just place it where is it? Oh, there it is, it's huge. Yeah, I would always also will improve these helpers a bit, because for the point light it's nice to see the range of the point light, but you also want to have the center so you can position it better.
It doesn't show the source, does it? Sort of.
Sorry? It
Where's
doesn't.
the source of the light in the helpers? On top?
The source?
Yeah, the light source. When you switch the helper on.
Yeah. It's just this kind of really rough sphere is actually the light, the boundaries of the light. So outside.
Where's the source? In the center of it.
Yeah, it's in the center.
Ah.
That's what I just said. It's really bad to see it in this case. That's what I said. I will improve this, so we of course have a better center. Yeah. It's a bad URL, but maybe if you just Google for physically based rendering and you can too, then you will find the URL. Also maybe now that I opened it, there's this website called Learn OpenGL, where most of the algorithms come from. It's also a really nice website for other things, and it's you have to get at one point how to port it to HLSL, but that's actually the source of a lot of things. I will also put these links into the material of the workshop. Okay, so let's get back. Hang on, I have to look up my thing there. Yeah. So maybe let's say we don't actually only want to use these textures, but do like a procedural texture. So for this I will add a fourth panel. Will bring back the preview. So I put a 4 up here. And now we have this one material twice, because it's looking around for the spreading. And I want to have another material, not only these three, but one that we will just do procedurally. So I will have another cons string and put this in between here, so we can have 4 textures. Okay, and for this I will just use the standard bubble noise. Okay, and just put this in here. Okay, now we have the next color, and you see there's more problems with these like breaks. That's because this noise is not tileable. It's not repeating. So all these example textures, I think, are repeating. Not sure about if everyone is doing it, but if let's just have a look at one. Anyone? Yeah. So if there's, maybe look at this feature here. This should actually come back at this side, so it can be repeated. Actually, it doesn't. It looks like it's not tileable also. Yeah, but that's why the bubble noise is looking like this here, because it's also not a tileable noise. Yeah, just a detail.
Where did you get this from, bubble noise?
It's a standard for shader. Okay, so this goes into the color. It can also be not only black and white, of course, but actually have a color. And now we also want a normal map and a roughness map. And for the normal map, I will actually use the normal map shader, also standard v4 shader. And now it looks like this. Maybe after this example, if you're interested, we can go also into this, what is the normal map and stuff like that. Yeah, I just realized that I completely skipped this. Yeah, we can do it. Let's just say for now, yeah, it has the information of the material, where are features and where they are like extruded, or where there's like a hill and a valley in the material, like you can kind of see here. It's hard to see. Wait, I will increase the normal map depth a bit. Yeah, and you see it already looks like some kind of hilly surface. And yeah, that. No, a height map is different. This one also tells you which parts are facing in which direction. Yeah.
The idea is, what is a normal? So if you have any surface, a normal is a vector pointing a 90 degrees from here, and the direction of this vector is encoded in the color values in the normal map. So you can read the normal map and you know the vector. So you don't have to confuse this.
Most of the normal maps you see are like tangent normals. That's what it does, funny color. So it's not the final angle, but it's the angle that you're adding to the surface of the model that you already have.
Yeah. So if you have this kind of scene with some objects and you would view it from above, this kind of encodes the angle of the surface. And this here, I guess, no, it's not the height map. I thought it was, but it isn't. So that's the normal map. And we close it again. So there's this one normal map shader that will automatically generate one for you, which will sometimes maybe not be totally correct, but since we're using something kind of abstract like noise, you will still get a nice result. So okay, let's connect this normal map to the. Oh, I already did. No. Oh no. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, getting a bit confusing. So now this is the normal map we generated. You already see here now it's already working. So this is without the normal map, and this is, oops, sorry, with the normal map. And yeah, just as Kyle said, if I adjust this value here, so in the shader, yeah, the shader already knows the orientation of this sphere here. So this is how it can compute the light. So there's a light at some point, and the light bounces off the surface of the object, and then maybe it bounces into your eye, and then you see these kind of small reflections here. And what the normal map is doing, it says, okay, at this point, just treat it as if it's not only a sphere, but it has a little ripple here. And that's the information that is inside the normal map. And if I increase the bumpiness here again, you will see the light behaves at this point as if there were these like hills and valleys. But as I said before, of course, this is only like a texture, so at the edge of the sphere, this looks still flat. It doesn't have any displaced geometry or anything.
Shininess is from the roughness now. From the rough. This is no roughness map.
Yeah, there's no roughness map yet, so this is all very shiny. And yeah, maybe I will just use the same texture for the roughness. Yeah. Yes?
The procedural texture mapping, is there a way to do that in avoid the hiding or use the procedural texture actually in the mapping without any hiding?
Yes, if you want to use noise, there's this really nice shader of Kyle, which is called a 3D noise, and I think you can make this make it tileable or non-repeating. I don't think I will show this now, but yeah, definitely. Maybe we can do it later, at the end.
You can just really quickly say you can also put your noise like in the forward shader itself instead of as a texture, and then you actually have access to like your kind of border space coordinates, but then you're having to modify the actual texture. I mean the actual shader. Sorry, it's not just using.
Yeah. So yeah. What we're doing here now, all this patching, generating the texture, you could also do this all in shader, of course, which would be much more effective, I guess. And you can also do more advanced ways of blending these textures, but yeah, that's, I guess, another workshop.
It's nice to just be able to change materials also.
Yeah.
You just use big textures.
Okay, so and yeah, it's nice that you can now also like animate this. Hang on, which one did I want to animate? Yeah, just maybe the roll. So I will have an LFO here, and now we'll also spread this to a 2D vector because I'm also rotating all the time the texture of this other material here. Like if I put it back. Yeah, this is also getting rotated, of course. So I will do a vector 2D join and just animate the sphere only and not that fast. Okay. Yeah. And of course you can use any object here. So maybe, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, I ignored the roughness now, but you can also put in the. Yeah, you can just take out any texture. Now, yeah, take a color, or maybe take the inverted version of this texture here, which looks like this, and the original texture looks like this. Or maybe, yeah, and put this into the roughness, and now you see, I will pause that, sorry. Yeah, now it's a bit more shiny in the valleys. Yeah, you can really add detail to this, and you can also layer multiple textures. This is what's actually done in something like Substance Designer. If you like to use this, so there are a lot of layers, like fine details that are rough, and things that are some details that are shiny, so you can get a more complex texture. You can also do this all procedurally. Okay, and what I wanted to show, you can of course use other geometry for this. So I have another geometry file here, and I have loaded. I have some model lying around here. Maybe you have something else, or you can use the teapot or whatever. It always takes a little while to load. It's quite a large object, like this, and it also happens to be huge and orientated the wrong way. So I will have to spread my pitch here to turn this guy around, and
How did you create this IO box now? I never get
this here.
Yeah.
Well, if you click here and then that's a just regular left click,
yeah,
and then middle mouse button. And if you did you mean this?
How
to
did
get the label?
you change it to 2D data?
If you just middle click and don't move too much,
Oh, okay, middle
it appears. Yeah.
I'll just
Yeah.
this value.
And I will, yeah, just have uniform scale here. And scale him down a bit. Yes.
You plan to implement the capability to use the IT for different materials on one object?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it. It would be nice, I guess. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, right now there's only this really what you also pointed out before. Only this really hardcore spreading possibility to do these things. And yeah, of course, if I just don't want to have this one object, but like 100 objects with 100 different textures, this will get kind of messy. But that's actually not really what this is built for now.
Yeah, it's like vvvv handles the shaders and the edges.
Yeah. And actually what might be interesting, it's actually not usual that this works with the sphere, because for the bump mapping, it needs some things. It needs the tangents and the binormal. Maybe not so important, but this shader has different techniques. Oh, sorry, the technique's already outside. Here. So you have just the physical based rendering, which has no bump mapping. Then you have the usual bump mapping, and you have some kind of auto-generated bump mapping. This will get important, like if I connect the sphere here again. You see, now it's gone, the sphere, and that's because it doesn't have the tangents and binormals. The V4 standard objects don't have these. If you import a model, it's usually fine, but if something like this happens and you don't see your object at all, try to change the technique here to auto-generate it. that's also more expensive. So if you can just have some, if you have a fixed mesh, you just should import this maybe as an FBX or anything. Yeah. Okay, and what's also, I will have my bearded man again. Really nice is that, yeah, you can use any geometry effect or any geometry now. So again, if I want to use another pack like Carl's Instant Noodles, I will just have one effect. If you don't see this now, wobble, then you don't have the pack installed. Doesn't matter. And I will just put this, oops. I will put this in between here. And what did I do? Oh, I will go to the help patch, so I don't have to set it up, lazy as I am, and just copy paste it out here. Newest version. It worked just before, but did I forget?
What's the texture from YouTube?
Second one, I deleted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Other compounding
Yeah, correct. So yeah, what I just said before, it's the wrong mode. So I have the auto-generated thing. So that works, of course. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's the example I wanted to show. Listen. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we just said we're hearing a lot of clicking, so maybe someone wants to still catch up, or yeah, just play around. Yeah. Maybe we'll do a short kind of break where you can just try out things for like maximum 10 minutes, or just have a smoke, whatever, and then I will explain some other things. Ah ja, eine Sache habe ich noch vergessen. Yeah, and if you see this here, so this is a calculation error of the automatically generated thing I just talked about. Maybe I will after the break also explain how this works and what it does internally, if you're interested. So as we talked about, here's the place where you do the image-based lighting things, and there's the cube map for the reflection. What you can, of course, do is just, maybe let's just have a cube map renderer. No, hang on, renderer cube texture. And yeah, just have a quad like this, and you can connect this here like that, and we don't see it. Why? Yeah, the quad is maybe not a good example. Let's have a box and a constant. You don't have to patch along. This is just a quick example. Okay, I know. We need the camera, of course. It doesn't even take a camera. I think it's all right. I just have to move the box a bit. Okay, so now you can see in the reflection there's a box. You don't see it in the scene now, but you can also do this. And you could render here whatever you want and use this as the reflection. But as you can see here now, it's always sharp. So there's no blurriness here. Because for the blurriness, show you. I had an example image, sorry. Ah, yeah. So, what has been done in this cube map is you have the normal rendering of the cube map. You can also do it in V4, but then you have different levels of blurriness in the MIP maps, and depending on the roughness of the material, different MIP maps will be used and blended. So you can't generate this in real time now in V4, and I'm not even sure if it's feasible to do this in real time at all. I don't think so. I think this is usually also in game engines pre-baked, everything. And here also appears this weird little texture again that we also use. So yeah, I think I will not get more into it. The bottom line is you can do some real-time cube maps here, but it will not be 100% correct, and you can't get the blurry reflections.
What if you just add a blur after blending it?
Yeah, you can do this, but then you can't control it by the texture anymore.
Is there a blur for 3D textures already?
No, there's also no blur for the cube map, but what you can do is go, cube to panorama. And if you do this only once, like maybe in the beginning of your scene, and here we also see our box now as a panorama. And now you can blur this and have it as a cube map again. I will do it maybe.
So for this particular scene that you do, that I would connect these, for example, I would like to see the head mirrored on the metallic plane, not just the roughness, but also
Mhm.
also on the feed that into the final, keep the final renderer, or the keep renderer, and then see that texture.
Yeah, I think we can do it. We can just
Maybe even blend it together with the
yeah, you can totally do it. Maybe you have a scene where you have some static, or maybe not static object. Yeah, I think you can easily do it if you have like a reflective ground and you have some object. You can stuff the object in here, render this into the cube map in real time all the time, and then use this as a reflection. This would be a valid workaround. But you use the physically based thing, which might not matter, but yeah, it will be all not correct anymore. So if you just want to have another surrounding like this, I did it with this tool. Maybe I show this real quick, how this works. So here you can load another file. Sorry, you see by browse.
Really, what you're talking about works way better with the deferred pipeline, because
Yeah.
right now with the forward pipeline, you're doing a lot of stuff up front and then doing it all again. With deferred, you can just do the geometry, put it in the cube map, and you don't really care about a lot of the other stuff. And then do like a full post-processing with the IDL and all that after you do the geometry on the cube map. So right now you're doing
what kind of pipeline do you do?
you basically like, you're doing a lot of extra steps right now. If you have a forward pipeline with IDL and then doing like a reflective cube map thing. So you really want to do like just geometry and like the display and then put that in the cube map and then do all the fancy stuff after that. That'd be ideal.
Yeah, that's would be a different setup.
Yeah, exactly. That's not how your system is set up.
No.
I think MicroD has, so it's actually kind of cool. So you do a forward IDL and then MicroD has the deferred IDL. So
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just show this real quick. So if you want to use this tool, it's quite cool. You just go to your project. Sorry.
This is for ideal textures, right?
Yes.
Only, not for materials.
Yes, that's for the IBL, so the lighting textures. So I just have to find my thing in this browser. Yeah, it's a open source tool. It's on GitHub. It's called CMFT, and there's the studio version, which is the standalone program. So I'll do the machine shop again. So you just and I don't have the cube map here. Sorry. Okay, sorry, hang on. Yeah, okay, I'll do just with this standard texture that's in here. So you just load your environment as a cube map here, and then you can start the filtering in here. So there's a lot of settings. What I learned is that you only want to have the map level, so these numbers don't get red. Otherwise, it won't match up anymore. And maybe I do just a smaller version, and then you just process, and it will be in the background using multiple CPUs calculate your texture. Yeah, I'll leave this running, and after that you can just say save and use them in here.
Does it matter at all if your source image is HDR
Yeah, it matters. So the question was if, how the bit rate, I guess, no, the bit depth, yeah, of the image matters, and it actually does. So in the examples, it's all 8-bit because the files tend to get really big, but you will get a lot of more quality. And yeah, the bit depth is actually taken all in account. That's another reason for why you need this tone mapping afterwards, because your screen or whatever will display everything in 8-bit, which is a certain depth of information that can be in a texture, but the calculation is done with more information. And before you display it, it has to all calculate it back into the 8-bit space, and this influences how this is done, basically.
It's non-linear.
Yeah, so that's why also this renderer is here now set to 16-bit. If you have it standard on 8-bit, yeah. Okay, now in this case I didn't see the difference. But you usually want to have at least 16-bit here, so you don't lose all the information after rendering. Okay, so are there any other questions or requests or things you would like to try out with your setup?
So materials, you usually go to the library and just get some materials. You wouldn't create them yourself in most cases. It's loads around.
Yeah, I mean you can create them, especially with, for example, Carl's really nice noise contribution. You have the possibility to create really nice procedural textures also, yeah.
But can you get all the 5 images you need? You need the height map, the front map, the UV,
Yes, I think you can generate all of them. Well, the ambient occlusion map would be kind of hard to generate, but you can just yeah, you can do it procedurally, I think. Yeah. I implemented this mainly to just have a way to something that matches exactly other workflows and programs. Like if you have Substance Designer or Unreal Engine or whatever, you can just use the same materials, the same object, and it will look exactly the same. So that's what I tried to have for this workflow.
Do you guys have an opportunity yet to pack it through the pipeline, something like Substance or Pixel for using this?
No, we didn't actually use this in a project yet, the texture part of that, so no.
I just did, and it works fine.
Yeah. Cool.
Is this expected to run alright with multi-screen setup, for example, on a facade? Just to have it like I tried this video. Is it expected to run?
Yeah. So maybe it's now a bit more technical questions. You can also, if you're not that experienced, feel free to ask really simple questions now, because this is actually supposed to be a more beginner's workshop where we can go now into the deeper topics, but also if you have the questions, I want to do lights, I still didn't got it, how to do the 2 lights, and it's just, you can feel free to ask this now. We have time to discuss this and I can show things. But what you're asking maybe is, I don't know, bit performance or so. So since this is a forward rendering thing, and it's also heavy on the pixel shader, it will get slower when you have a lot of objects and a lot of pixels. Okay, but yeah, there's one thing you can do if your scene gets really slow. You can do depth pre-pass. And there's also in the girl power, and that's real simple. So you just take a depth only node here, and I have to put another pin to my group, so rearrange it like this. So what this does now is rendering the object again, but only the depth. And what this does is it reduces the draws, but you have to render the geometry again. So, okay, maybe let's rephrase. I'll explain a bit more. In the forward rendering, if I look at this object, there's a pixel here, this has to be calculated. But in the forward rendering, what it also does is calculate the plane behind it, even though I don't see it. So this pixel might be drawn twice. First the plane, and then over it the face here. And of course this will cost you in the end, especially if you have like, I don't know, 1,000 spheres in front of each other. It will be really expensive, even though you just see one. And but if you do this here before that, it will first render the spheres, but without all the light calculations, only the depth, which is quite cheap. And after that, it sort of knows already that there already throws away all the things that are behind the closest mesh. So that's a big optimization in some cases. You will have to try this.
Are you also rendering the normal one after that?
Yeah, you have to do this first. So this is the depth only has to be rendered first. If you do it the other way around, it won't do anything.
So it's like cooling.
Yeah, basically. I think it's called early depth rejection. I think, I'm not completely sure. So the pipeline knows, okay, there's something in front of all the other things, so I don't care.
You just paint it on the layer below, and then it just explodes.
Yeah, there's an help patch, I think, or no, not an help patch, but there's a girl power in the DirectX 11 which explains it very well, and that's kind of important for the forward rendering.
Because it's a course, it's used also, as you mentioned, that there are a lot of objects, these are more like particle objects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Thousands of spheres, so 10,000 little spheres. Then it gets slow, and there are performance issues, and it's workaround would help.
Yes, this would help, but also now this is not doing any instancing. So doing like throwing a particle system in here would be quite bad. I will do a version with instancing, which will make it faster. Right now this is good for if you have like, I don't know, you want to shade a car or like 5 objects and do a nice setup. I think now that's a good use case for this setup and quite easy to use. Yeah.
I have a question regarding the connection between Carl's neurons
Yes.
and this. Would what instancing means for you? Mean that you would could connect his instance stuff right away, or does it have to be bridged between you guys somehow?
Yeah, it depends. I think I could do an adapter or maybe integrate it in one version. Yeah, would be nice. So you can use, for example, do instancing but still use the colors for the instancing. Yeah, I think that would be nice. So right now this doesn't work. So it all only takes meshes, single meshes. Yeah.
If you want to have like images transformed in different ways, you can do that in a geometry shader first. So then like the end shader doesn't care.
Yeah.
But it's really just if you want to be adjusting the things from super physical like on a per instance basis, then based
Yeah.
on having the ID buffer.
Makes quite some difference already in this example. I mean,
The performance.
yeah.
Yeah, especially depending on which model you use. I mean, if you do the depth pre-pass, there is one vertex shader has to be done, so the model will have to be rendered in some form, so you kind of lose that, but you gain a lot on the pixel shader side. So you have to see in your setup. Isn't there a draw course? So there's some DX11 debug. No, there's also one. There's one debug node that shows you the overdrawing. Maybe that's one. This one? No. Okay, yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, you can also use this one. So I will still show what the depth pre-pass is doing. So yeah, here's you see the pixel shader invocations, which means how often the pixel shader has to render something. And now if I disable the depth pre-pass, you see it jumped up already quite a bit. And this will be much more extreme if I had like 10 of these heads behind each other. This would be like, probably 10 times more sometimes. Yeah, but if you do this, it's kind of almost as fast as the deferred. Not quite, but pretty close. And also, which is kind of more, deeper thing, maybe you saw the forward plus implementation of Johannes. And we also integrated this in here. It's not in this version now, but it's really easy to integrate his forward plus shader in here, and then you can also have like thousands of lights. Right now, this will get really slow if you do like more than 100 lights or so, which is quite natural. But this also works. Sorry? What about it? Yeah, of course, that's even slower if you do a lot of shadows, lights with shadows, But also, if you do regular lights, if you do too many lights, it will get slower at some point.
Will you want to include this also in a future version?
Yeah, I will include it, and as I told you before, there has to be some reworkings to be done, and he will also do some optimizations and we will make it compatible. So, Okay, so this is already quite in-depth stuff. Is there any other questions? Maybe a bit more basic, or
Yeah. We can skip it if one. I was just kind of curious, like you're basically using somehow a linear workflow.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you need to take care for with the textures and actually learning them? I know that it was really very clear on how that worked in 4D.
I'm actually not sure now. I think, you should. The best would be if you had 32-bit textures also, of course. And especially for the lighting, you will use a lot of information if you use only 8-bit. But I think, in my opinion, it still looks quite fine if you don't do the HDR thing all the time. Yeah. But if you really want to recreate a look, you have to use the same bit depth, I guess. Yes. I don't know if that was the question.
I've seen some workflows where it's like you're kind of loading a texture that might already be encoded in sRGB or something like that,
Mhm.
and you're kind of unwrapping it and you're doing your linear stuff and then it's getting wrapped again. But I don't know in 4D if that's kind of what the default is or if there's a way to the toggle that? Or
Yeah, I also don't know. So the image-based textures are DDS, and I guess I hope that's quite uncompressed and will not be converted. But I don't know. Yeah. Yes.
HDRs and beats are also supported?
I don't think the file texture can handle HDRs. The file texture node, this one,
Yeah.
it only will take DDS, I think. I'm not sure, actually, if it takes it. I think
Yeah.
you could use... It is working? Yeah, okay.
So the HDR is just an image file format is like 16 or 32 bits.
Yeah.
It's not
But-
a difference, so it doesn't matter if you say that as a TTA or
Yeah.
HDR.
Yeah, so the usual file formats also in this tool, it's also... Meanwhile, it finished. So, yeah, as I showed you before, now it calculated the level of detail in the bitmaps. And yeah, it also has like these standard formats, DDS, KTX, TJ, and HDR are like the usual file formats for this kind of stuff. Maybe one more detail. If you're using these kind of tools, you can set the level of detail in your mipmaps or the mipmap level, and you can set this in shader. It's not outside at the moment, so it's at the very top. I will also put this as a define, I think, but here you can change it mipmap level. So in your tool, if you say, okay, I want to filter this, then you can say here the number of mipmaps to filter, 7 or 8 or something, and you can set this here. And also, if you have some cubemap from the internet or so and you don't know if there's any mipmaps or so, the info node will also tell you. So there's an info texture 2D, and this will also tell you actually got 11 mip levels, so it's not correct also. But yeah, it works, but you will use a bit of your range. Yeah. Okay.
Could you just do a really simple example where you have a texture that you sample and then you see it in render and see if the colors look the same or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Then we know if the sampling is like linear or...
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe we do an example where we look at the texture and the texture color, how it comes out in the renderer. So I will close all of that and just go back to the simple texture control version. Okay, here it is. So let's see, we're just using, oops. I will disconnect all the special textures. So we only have the one texture, and have a look at this. So yeah, looks already a lot brighter, but I mean it totally depends on your light setup also, I guess. So let's have a light now here. Yeah, it totally also depends on this tone mapping curve. So if I disable this, it's a lot closer actually.
Can you disable the light and up the global diffuse color?
Yeah, but so is there another light? Or okay, we have 3 lights anyways. Oops. It's because it's metallic. Yeah.
Yeah, a constant shader.
Yeah. Yeah, you already see that the tone mapping makes it a bit darker in general. So I just put up the gamma a bit. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if this answers anything. But yeah.
Looks like it looks fine to me. It looks like the texture isn't really
Yeah.
mangled in this conversation.
I mean, this texture is also a PNG.
Yeah, like
so-
what else has to be if you loaded a random JPEG you found
Yeah.
and see if it shows up the same.
Yeah, I think it's alright to work with. So I don't have I'm not saying this is all correct. So maybe to give a bit of insight. So this is also a learning project for me, totally. So I started with the Phong point and said I can only have 1 light if I only could have 2 lights. So I did like a for loop and said, oh yeah, this works. You can do a for loop and then you can have 2 lights. And then I was developing it further and further. And then I did the Superphong, which was still actually in the core of the old Phong shader, just with a lot of stuff around that, which was also already looking quite okay. But then I thought, it looks quite nice, but it's not a standard. So if I take substance design or anything, it looked kind of the same. If I adjust everything all the time, it will be the same. But then I decided, okay, to redo it all again. And that's now why it's called Superphysical. And I think at least you can integrate it into your workflow. So because it has now the standard, it should work like this. But still there's a lot of stuff to improve also, I guess. Okay. Yeah, so as I said before, now a couple of times, this was supposed to be more beginners-orientated workshop. I don't know if you guys look a bit more advanced, but still, if there's, maybe we can do, maybe will do one more simple scene again, which is even more simple, so you can maybe patch along if you like, just to get used to it. Or I'll just show some other things. So again, I guess my workflow would be, if I want to start a new project, I would just copy paste one of these folders. Yeah, that will show you one quite interesting thing, how you can work with the image-based lighting, but still kind of make the overall look a bit more dynamic. Okay, so we're back here with the teapot, but let's say I want to use this other setup, so I will go to the studio, take the reflection and studio irradiance, and also like before, I have to set the background of the cubemap. Skybox. Okay. So I really like to use these kind of simple reflections if you do like some abstract graphics, just some abstract shapes and stuff. Maybe you don't want to have the really realistic machine shop reflecting in this, might not be the look you want. So I will also reduce the metalness here now. Okay. So but now it's hard to, this is now a fixed cube map, and I ran it like this, and it's black, which is maybe kind of depressing. And now I actually want to have some more color. So what I do is use these global reflection colors here again. And that's why I added these, so we can still have a bit of more dynamic feel to it. So maybe I wanted to have like a really red or orange surrounding, but now it's totally incorrect. Now the reflections are like colorful and the background is not. So what you can do now is go here and set a blend mode to your cube map surrounding. Blend render state. Or maybe I can even patch this. Are you interested in how this cube map part works, that we see the cube map around this? Or, yes? Okay. So I'll just remove this. So there's a standard shader order that's called cube map. Like this. And we just connect this here. And this also, of course, needs a cube map, so you can load it with the standard file texture, 2D. And I just discovered there's also file texture HDR. So this might be interesting for the whole bit depth thing. What does it do?
Oh yeah, definitely need
Yeah. So this might be an answer. So it seems like, I think I might have read this in the forum as well, that maybe the file texture doesn't import it in a high bit depth. So you might need the image pack for this to work. Well, you obviously do need it for this node to work, but yeah. Okay, just a side note. Okay, so the normal cube map can be loaded with the file texture, and I will go here back to my assets.
Maybe the concept is a DBS.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you can convert HDR to DBS.
Yeah, the question is if the file texture node always converts to 8-bit, maybe the case.
Yeah.
And then all our bit shuffling topic from before is obsolete.
So I connected the cube map to the file texture and then to the cube map. It's also what I did before really quickly. Always really nice is to use this cube to pano texture effect to just, yeah, because you can't really look at a cube map. A cube map actually consists of like 6 textures, I would say, like as if you're inside a cube, and these are the walls of the cube, and you can't display it with your preview, but you can use the cube to pano, and then you have a nice panorama of the cube map. And yeah, so the cube map, in order to see it here in the scene, also needs a geometry to put it on, and this is usually a sphere. Okay, here it is. So yeah, I can change the background color. So now it's like, but now it's like on the outside of the sphere. What we have to do is, what we want is to see it from the inside. But if I go inside, it disappears again. That's the rasterizer thing. This one here, this node. It has different options, and it tells the shader which part of the geometry should be shaded. So standard is back cal simple, which means the back side of the polygons will be thrown away, because usually you don't see this. If you're outside of the sphere, you don't see the inside, and you will never see it unless you're inside of it. So you can just throw it away and don't have to calculate anything. But now in this case, we want to say to front cal, and now all the front sides disappeared, and now we're only seeing the inside of the sphere. I can say to front color wireframe, maybe it's a bit more clear. Now I can look inside of it, and if we go to back color wireframe, now I only see the outside. And look, I can look through here, but I don't see anything in the back. And do it to no color wireframe. Now all of the faces are drawn. So, but for the cube map, we want the front color simple. Okay. And then we just scale it a bit up. And it's still wrong. That's because you have different modes here in the cube map, and we want the sky like this. And what you can already see here, for the image-based lighting, these reflections of the cube map, they are always treated as if they are infinitely away. So they are, yeah, it doesn't matter if objects are close or far. It's because it's just an approximation, it's just a sphere. And so if you do the technique we talked about before, you can generate a cube map in real time, but you will still get infinitely far away reflections. In some cases this works, and in some not. So here this is far enough so you don't really see it, it looks correct. But if you want to have a cube really close and want to have a correct reflection, this won't work even if you do a dynamic cube map. It sort of works for like round objects visually because yeah, the eye can't really tell if it's correct. If you have a sphere, you can't really see if the reflection is correct or not, so it works. So, but if you have like a plane or a cube, you will immediately see it's off and strange.
So with the example we had before, having the head there and then below some kind of plane, it would probably not appear like there is the
Yeah,
reflection of the head.
you have to tweak it. It can work,
Okay.
but it's really hackish and can only, yeah, it's not the best way to do dynamic reflections at all. So yeah.
Is the ray tracing the better one?
Yeah, that's the perfect one, but that's really expensive also. There's, you can also do some ray marching, which is something in between, I guess. Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So, but what I wanted to show you actually now is the orange color thing. So, I will delete this because it's not needed. I will use another of these render state nodes, which is the blend render state, this one. Connect it here and set it to add. Now the cube map is added on top of everything. And now I can actually kind of set the background and it will get blended together nicely. And what I like to do is use the global reflection color here. And now we get something a bit more interesting. Maybe you have to multiply this a little bit. Yeah. And maybe use the same diffuse color. Very bright. Yeah, but that's a nice way to have a dynamic color, for example, but still use the cube map. Yes?
But there's no possibility to change the amount of the Fresnel effect.
No, the Fresnel effect, which is, you see it here quite well, like the reflection in the center is smaller than on the outside. And in previous version you could change this manually, but now to adopt this physically based rendering, that's kind of fixed. Because
Is it based on the material? I mean glass or water or...
yeah, it is usually based on the material, but what I read is for all non-metals, it's actually really, really similar. It's much more important how rough the material is, and this actually influences this. So see if I change the roughness here, Okay, I also have a roughness texture, so it's, I will remove this, hang on. So the roughness is more important to this, I guess. You can set it in the shader if you like. It's a constant value. And I tried to making it dynamic so people can change it outside, but it really isn't so important. Yeah.
Using Schlick's approximation.
Sorry?
Schlick's approximation.
Yes. This, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, I will upload the example with the multiple materials in one texture. Yeah, and all the other things are basically already in the contribution, I would say. Yeah, okay, so we don't have to prolong this. Thanks a lot. That's it.